Hello beautiful people, welcome back to my channel Nomadic Unicorn. I am Hannah, and today, following on from last week's video of the final part of our road trip in Western Australia, I decided that I would tell you 10 things you shouldn't do when road tripping Australia and some of the mistakes that we made whilst on the road. So I thought it would be really fun to run through some of the mistakes so you can learn from them and also just have a bit of a laugh at our expense. Number one, if you are taking a gas cooker or stove, do not blow it up on your first night. Yeah, we actually managed to do this. We left Perth, we did the little bit of our road trip, we saw the pinnacles, we went to AIRBNB, and then we stopped at our campsite for the night. We set up our tent in front of this beautiful view of the ocean in a free campsite. We were winning, we were doing so well. Nothing had gone wrong, and then we got out the gas stove to cook dinner. My number one mistake here was that I had bought new gas canisters, and we did have a friend check they were the correct ones, but for some reason, being completely cat-handed about it, I managed to not fit the canister correctly and some squirted out. Problem was that I then, in my absolute stupidity, decided to still try to ignite it, and you can guess what happened. Flames everywhere. I was terrified because I really didn't want to start a bushfire in this campsite. I wasn't so much worried about the stove or the fact we didn't have hot dinner, I just did not want to start a bushfire. After me dancing around going, Irene, what do we do? What do we do? Pouring water on it, which was probably a mistake in itself. Seriously panicking. Irene just looking at it going, I don't know, Hannah. What should we do? We had someone come over and she was amazing. She was camping in a caravan with her family, ran off to find some old Australian bloke which came over with his big shovel. This is a true story. This is really genuinely what happened on our first night. And he starts just hitting it, literally just bashing our camp stove. I now, thinking back, I'm so glad that didn't explode further, but he seemed to know what he was doing, and then he shoveled dirt on it and the fire went out, thankfully. We were really lucky having such nice people around us. There were a couple of German backpackers who had a good laugh at our expense whilst eating their dinner. The guy that put the fire out offered us to use his one, which we were like, no, really, thank you. He's like, it's new, it's hardly ever been used. We're like, no, we're not going near them. We just don't want to touch it. He offered us that, and the lady that initially came over even offered us some of her dinner that she'd cooked for her and her family because she had extra. We were really embarrassed, said thank you very much, and went to bed having eaten sandwiches. So yeah, don't blow up your gas stove, particularly on the first night. Tip number two, running on from the blowing up the gas stove, is do not skimp on a fire blanket when going on a road trip. We literally looked at these in one of the car sort of shops the day before and we're like, no, we don't want to spend that, we'll never use it. If only we had known. Yeah, maybe a fire blanket would be a good idea. If you never use it, fine, you can sell it on. We sold on loads of our car stuff after the road trip, but it is a good idea to have around, because if we had have done that and there had been no one else there, yeah, it could have been very different. Mistake number three. Showering when on a road trip is always, difficult. If you can find a free shower, it's luxury. Usually they're cold, but you really don't care, you just want to be clean. But in preparation, we went to Kmart and we saw this solar shower. It was a, bag which you hooked up into a tree, and it had a long cord and you stood under it and you did your thing, and one side or possibly all of it was black. So the idea was you sat it out in the sun came down and it heated the water for your shower. In theory it seems a great idea, but we actually never used it despite buying the damn thing, because it takes 20 litres of water, and when you're on the road trip you will realise just how precious your water supply is. You're not going to want to waste it on a shower. It's much better to go dirty for a few days and just smell between yourselves, so don't buy it in the first place. Mistake number four, don't rely on free barbecues. After we blew up the camp stove on our first night, which was interesting, we obviously, if we wanted a hot meal, had to rely on free barbecues, and Australia is great for this. There are loads dotted around. The only issue is they are not the fastest, and you can't always be guaranteed that they will work. Don't rely on them is all I'm gonna say. Mistake number 5. Don't think that your cool box, or esky as they're known in Australia, is going to stay cold. We had some like freezer blocks which we had put in there. These heated up so quickly, they will. And you can buy ice and put it in sandwich bags and stuff, but it will melt super fast, and you're going to resent having to spend money on frozen water to keep your stuff cool. So my biggest advice is don't buy a load of food that's got to be chilled. Try to have some dry products. In the end, we ended up living on cereal bars and random sandwiches and things out of cans. You're not going to eat really well on a road trip, particularly if you don't have a cooker. So don't waste money on food that you need to keep cold in the esky, because it won't stay cold for long unless you want to fork out a lot on frozen water. Number 6. We bought a 4-wheel drive known as Beast, as you're already aware, and this was something I would still do, but it was also a little bit silly in as much as I hadn't driven in a very long time, and I am scared of driving, which is another story entirely, and Irene hadn't driven since passing her test like maybe 6 months earlier in England, so it was a bit of a risk buying it. There's a lot of risks around buying cars for road trips anyway in Australia. I'm possibly going to do a video on that for you at some point. And the thing with 4-wheel drives is it's different to driving a normal car. And you don't have to put it in 4-wheel drive, but if you really want to get the most out of it, you do need to. We weren't overly worried about learning before we left Perth, because we had planned to travel some of the trip with a lady that I worked with when I was waitressing and her sister, who did have also a 4-wheel drive and knew how to drive it. Unfortunately, the first occasion where it would have been useful to know how to drive it was completely unexpected. They just took us off on this little sand track, not knowing it was going to go off-road big time, and I freaked out. I have never been so terrified in my life. We were fine, it didn't roll the car or anything, but when I got out I was just like this, and all I had to do was really do a little bit of forward planning and get someone to show me how to drive it properly, and that wouldn't have happened. So if you are buying a 4-wheel drive, know how to drive it. Mistake number 7 of our road trip. Don't think that the pressure in your tyres doesn't matter. We'd read that, you know, you need to adjust your tyre pressure and everything like that, and we hadn't really thought too much about it. We did buy a tyre pressure gauge, and we did have like a compressor to blow the tyres up if necessary, although looking at the state of the thing that came with the car, I don't think it actually would have worked. But don't read about tyre pressures and think, oh, it'll be fine. It won't. You'll end up with a blowout, or you'll end up getting stuck in sand. We did get stuck in sand. That wasn't entirely our fault. That was to do with the track we went down without knowing we were going down. Obviously we didn't have time to let the tyre pressure out for that, so yeah, we got stuck. If you don't think about your tyre pressures, you will either end up with a blowout, getting stuck somewhere, or you'll just end up wasting fuel and spending out more on petrol or diesel. Number 8. Don't plan to sleep in the back of the car all of the time. We were sleeping in the back of Beast a lot, so that meant for us unpacking everything out of the back into the 2 front seats and putting like the spare wheel and stuff under the car at night, and this got boring very quickly. It was hard work, and we had to stop at places a lot earlier than we would otherwise because it took so much time and we needed the light to do it. Get a cheap tent. You can buy them in Kmart, really cheap, and have that as backup, because there are going to be times where it's going to be too hot to sleep in the back of your vehicle, and places where you are going to want to sleep in a tent because you want to open it and just look at the view of the sea, or yeah, it's just a different experience staying in a tent, and it will be easier to set up in a short time period if you get somewhere late. Number 9, do not underestimate the insects. People get worried about spiders and snakes and crocodiles in Australia. No, it's the insects you need to worry about. Oh my god, there are so many insects. The flies, oh, the flies. You know, you see those stupid hats with the little corks? There's a reason those were invented. And there's really stupid like fly shield nets you can put down. Once you have travelled inland a bit, you will understand why. The flies will try and get in your eyes, your ears, your mouth, your nose. They're disgusting. You will get your own personal fly. You will think it's because you smell, which you will, but it's just because there's so many and they follow you. The only way I could walk at one point from our tent to the toilet on this free campsite without just having them like everywhere was by swinging my hairband around my head like an absolute mad woman. And that was the only way I could get them away from my face, just to walk to the toilet. You're going to be sitting out at night, maybe playing cards or whatever by lights. They're drawn to the lights, so try and get yourself like a citronella candle or a bug spray as well. I hate killing things, but if you have camped and you've done the road trip, you will understand where I'm coming from. We actually were held hostage in our tent a couple of times by grasshoppers and things, and we were chased from a free campsite. I know this sounds ridiculous. I know it sounds ridiculous, but these hornets were insane. We pulled up in this campsite and I got out of the car and I was just stood sort of getting some fresh air. Irene sat in the car and then I see this hornet and ooh, I'm scared of bees and wasps anyway. This thing was huge. So I jumped back in the car, terrified. And we then watched this thing literally flying at the windows, attacking the windscreen wipers, the tyres, and then its friend came. And they were just attacking the car. We thought maybe we'd sort of driven too near a nest or something, so we pulled the car right to the other end of the free campsite. 5 minutes later, they're back. We drove away and paid for a campsite that night. I know that sounds so ridiculous, but at that point, we were so fed up of the insects and being chased and bitten, and yeah, don't underestimate them. And number 10, and this is probably the most important one, don't leave your sense of humour behind. There's going to be times when you probably feel a little bit like crying. You're going to be hungry. You'll have eaten the most bizarre sandwiches for the last 4 days and cereal bars. You will want a shower because you're so disgusting, it's unbelievable. You'll be covered in red dirt and you'll have run out of baby wipes. So at these sort of times, don't leave your sense of humour behind. Road tripping is absolutely incredible and I would not change a thing other than possibly our near-death experience in Carangini.
But that's another story.
I wouldn't change a thing about it. I loved road tripping. There was good times, there was bad times, but it taught me more about myself in those 19 days than probably the 2 years previously. But you do have to have a sense of humour. Find ways to entertain yourself and just realise how lucky you are to experience the amazingness of road tripping around Australia. I hope you found this video entertaining, maybe educational, I don't really know. I don't know what it was supposed to be. I just wanted to share with you some of the funny moments and experiences we had whilst on the road in Western Australia. If you did miss the last part of our trip, I'll link it up here for you. Don't forget I'm on social media, Instagram, Facebook and Twitter. All the links are down there. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up, share with your friends, and if you haven't already, subscribe to this little crazy travel family we have here. Until next time, much love, take care, bye! Why didn't I do all of this video in this hat? Okay, enough. Bye! Myanmar was previously known as Burma, and if you speak to your grandparents or even your parents, they probably will know the country by that name.